So this lecture is over creating a family, and what we did in class and what we're going to do for this example is we're going to create a water fountain family. So to create a new family, in the just main page here, you can go to New under Families, or if you hit the Revit drop down, you can hover over New here and click Family here. So once you've opened this up, this will give you a list of different templates that you can use for your family. I'm going to be looking under English Imperial, and I'm going to scroll down until I get to plumbing fixture. And since we're doing a water fountain, it's going to be connected to the wall. So we want to do a plumbing fixture that's a wall-based fixture. We'll hit open, and that'll bring us into our workspace for creating our water fountain. So when we're creating our water fountain, the main thing we want to worry about is creating these reference planes to draw our water fountain on. If you remember from class, making a reference plane makes it so that we can parameterize the dimensions between the reference planes and then lock our object to those reference planes. So if those dimensions change, the reference planes will change, and then the locked objects that were attached to those reference planes will change as well. So you guys can pull up the cut sheet of the water fountains to get the dimensions necessary. We simplified them a little bit, so we're just going to make it so that the water fountain comes 18 inches out from the front and then is 12 inches wide. If you remember, it really doesn't matter where you draw these reference planes and what their dimensions are currently, because then we'll be able to come back afterwards and change these values. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to draw two reference planes that are going across horizontally in front of the wall here, and then a reference plane on either side of the centerline reference plane there. If you'll remember, we want to make sure that we're drawing our water fountain on the placement side. And the reason we'll do that is because when we want to come in and actually place our water fountain in our project that we're working in, we want to make sure that whichever side our cursor is on is the side that the water fountain is going to get placed on. So we have these now. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and draw just a rectangle that's going to represent kind of the body of our water fountain. So we'll go to Create. We're going to create an extrusion. So we're creating an extrusion, and we are working in a 2D view. We're working in our reference level. So that means when we're creating something in 2 dimensions, we have to always keep in mind what's happening in the 3rd dimension, in that Z direction that's going into and out of the screen. If you look over here, that's where this comes into play, this extrusion start and the extrusion end. So for our water fountain, we start 27 inches up, and then we know that the thickness of our water fountain is 6.5 inches. So we want to end at 2 foot 9.5 inches there. Okay, so now that we've determined what's happening in the Z direction, we can easily just draw the outline of our shape. And we're just going to start with a rectangle. So I'm going to click from this corner to this corner to draw a rectangle here. And you'll see now that we want to lock it to these reference planes. We drew it on the reference planes. We can now tell our object that we want to make sure that it's locked to these reference planes. We're going to turn all of those locks on. Again, what's going to happen now is anytime we make changes to the dimensions between the reference planes, our object is locked to those reference planes and will change with it. Okay, before we finish, let's add a quick fillet, and let's make it a radius right there of 3 inches, and then we're just going to fillet the 2 front sides. Okay, perfect. Once we're done with that, we can hit the check mark to finish up. Okay, cool. Now we have this water fountain that's coming off the wall like this. It's curved. If we go to our 3D view, which we can see over here, we have our general shape. It's that certain thickness we gave it, and it has a plan view of what we drew. Pretty simple. Okay. So what we want to do next is we want to add the button to the, or actually let's parameterize it first before we keep drawing some more. So I'm going to go back to our reference level, and I'm going to give parameters to the width. I'm going to give parameters to the length from the wall. These are going to be length parameters. So to create them, we want to go to Annotate, and we want to make aligned dimensions. In this class, we're only going to be worrying about length parameters, but you can give parameters to a whole bunch of different things in Revit. Okay, so for the length from the wall, we want to go from the front face of the wall. So we want to make sure we grab this reference plane that's on the front, and we'll reference it to this reference plane here. Once you've done that, you can just click anywhere on the screen to set that dimension. And and then we're done for now with that. So let's go ahead and click this dimension, and up here you'll see that you have the option to give it a label. So we'll hit the drop down on label, and we're going to say we want to add a parameter to it. We'll call this parameter length. We want to make it a family parameter, which means it doesn't show up in schedules or tags, and that's fine. We're just dealing with lengths and widths and things like that. So we're not going to worry about shared parameters in this class. And then we're going to make this an instance parameter. If you remember, the difference between a type parameter and an instance parameter is a type parameter is when you put in a certain family. So let's say we load this in, we load in just one family. If we give this a type parameter, that means if we change it in the family properties, it will change it for that type of family. So for instance, if we put in 10 of these water fountains, then we click one water fountain and change its lengths and widths, it'll change it for all of the water fountains in our family. If we chose to make this instance instead, we can change each individual water fountain that's the same family by itself. So let's say we want one water fountain to come 2 feet off the wall, one water fountain to come 2 feet 3 inches off the wall, whatever. We can make it so that they're all different without having to make a duplicate family every time we change it. So again, in this class we're only going to be worrying about instance parameters. We'll hit OK there. Okay, so now we have a length of 1 foot 10 inches. And now you can see if you come up to properties here and go to family types, if we click that, you can easily see that you have the length dimension here, and it's very simple to change it. So we want it to be 18 inches, so I'll type in 18 inches. I'll move this over and see what happens. I'll hit apply, and now you can see that the length changed. So now it's 1 foot 6 inches, and the reference plane moved in closer to the wall, and this changed as well. So it's looking good. We'll hit OK. We want to do the same for the width. So we'll create, we'll go to annotate, and we'll do an aligned, and we want to create an aligned dimension right there, from this reference plane to this reference plane. If you remember though, if we made just this, from this reference plane to this left reference plane, gave it a parameter and changed that value, it kept this left one right where it was, but moved the right one. So to be able to move it about the center, we want to give it 2 annotations, and this is important that you make sure you do all this in one set of dimensioning. So we'll click the left one, we'll click the middle one, then we'll click the right one before we click away, so we have both of these together. And now we'll click away, and once we've done that, you'll see that it gives you the option to make those dimensions equal. So we'll click that EQ, which allows us to make those dimensions equal. Now we'll hit escape. And so what that'll do is it doesn't necessarily lock these dimensions to anything, but if this one changes, let's say this one bumps out there, this one has to change to be that same dimension. You'll see if I drag this over that the other one's going with it. Okay. So what we can do now is we can give this dimension a parameter, so if it changes, it'll change symmetrically about this center line here. So we'll click it, we'll go to label, we'll add another parameter to it, and this time calling it width. It's a family parameter, we want to make it an instance parameter, we'll hit OK. And so there we go, we have our water fountain with a length and a width. So now let's go ahead and add the button out front. So we want the button to come off 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to go to create, I'm going to go to reference line, or I'm sorry, not reference line, reference plane, create reference plane. And I want it to come off of this right here. And we know that's 1 foot 6, so we can type in 1 foot 6.75 inches. And then I can, it didn't give me that, shoot. Okay. If you remember, when you're having a tough time getting it so you get your reference plane right up there, you can create a reference line. It'll temporarily give you that direction there. So we can go to create reference line and just draw it up 0.75 inches. Now we can come back over to create reference plane and get that object snap. And then you can just go ahead and delete that reference line when you're done with it. Okay, so we have the reference plane for where we want the button to start and end. Now we want to make the button coming out this way. If we want to use the extrusion command, though, we probably want to get in a different view, because if you are drawing the extrusion, you're going to draw the profile of it, and then you're going to extrude it out in the 3rd dimension. So let's go ahead and make it so that our work plane becomes this reference plane right here, the one I have highlighted. So we'll go to create, And then over here you can see where it says work plane. We can set our current work plane. So we'll say set. We're going to just pick a plane. We'll hit OK, and we'll pick that plane right there. Revit knows that we're not going to be able to draw on that plane in this view because it's perpendicular. So instead what we'll have to do is we want to say that we want to go to a certain view. And I'm going to go to the elevation placement side to create this view. We'll open that view up. And now we're here. We're in this view. We need one more reference plane really quick, just going across here in this direction to make sure that we're putting this button right in the center. So create reference plane. You'll see that you can lock it to the center there, so I'll go from midpoint to midpoint. So now we have a reference plane right there, so we have an easy way of drawing a circle in the center. I'll go to create. We're making another extrusion. We want to make it a circle right at that intersection with a radius of 1 inch. And I'm not going to worry about where this extrusion starts and ends right now. And the reason for that is I want to go into a different view and drag this extrusion and lock it to those two reference planes I created in the floor plan reference level view. So again, I'm not going to worry about our start and end right now. I'm just going to hit check. Okay, so it looks correct in this view. If we go back over to our reference level floor plan, we see where this extrusion was actually made. It was made extended out here and went too far out. But again, now if we click this extrusion, you see we have an option to change where it starts and ends based on our grip arrows here. So I'm going to take this grip arrow, bring it down to that reference plane, and once I drag it down to this reference plane, I can choose to lock it there. Then I'll grab this one, drag it down to that reference plane, and I'll lock it there. So now quickly, I'll just show you, you don't have to do this, but if we go and we change our length from 1'6" to 2 feet, oh, you can see I forgot to do one thing. So yeah, when I changed this length from 1'6" to 2 feet, this reference plane went along just fine. Our extrusion was locked to this reference plane, but we forgot to make it so that this reference plane was locked to this one. So let's go ahead and we'll go back and we'll make sure that this reference plane and this reference plane are locked to a certain dimension so that once this one moves, that'll move out with it. So we'll go back to annotate, we'll create an align dimension. It'll go from this one right here to this one here. Now once we click away, we see that we have it as 3/4 of an inch from there to there. We'll lock it. And so now when we come and we change this length from 1'6" to 2 feet, this dimension changed here, the reference line went out, it brought the object with it, and now the dimension between these two reference lines is locked, so it's always 3/4 of an inch. So now that this moved out, the button had to move out with it. So let's move this back to 1'6", the dimension it's supposed to be, and now everything looks good. Okay, so we've created our extrusion for our water fountain, just kind of the body of it. We've made a button. Let's go ahead and make a void for this water fountain as well. And this void is just going to be kind of a standard box inside of this this water fountain here. I'm just going to make it so our void is an inch offset on the left, on the right, comes inward 3 inches, and then comes inward here maybe an inch or so below the arc. So I'll go to create, reference plane, and I'm just going to come in here real quick and I can get a quick extension from that left 1/1 inch. I'll bring it up. It doesn't matter where it ends, so I'll just kind of click there. Bring it in an inch from here, draw it through, click. I want to bring it up 3 inches from here. So if I do that, again, it's kind of hard to get it right on because a lot of times you'll get a lock to the center line instead. So when that happens, we can go to create, reference line, and draw a line up that's 3 inches. So then we can easily create our plane going across there. So we draw a reference plane that came across 3 inches. And then we'll create another reference plane that I'm going to put maybe, I don't know, I'll go 4 inches down from that reference plane that describes the edge wall on top there. So I'll bring it over across this way like this. And yours doesn't have to look exactly like mine. I'm just making it so I have an intersection for a box here that'll fit easily inside of our water fountain. So now that we've done that, what we want to go ahead and do is we want to make sure that all of these dimensions are locked as well. We want to make it so that we're always 4 inches down from that end wall there, we're always an inch inward from that wall, we're an inch inward from that wall, and we're 3 inches inward from there. It'll just make it so just kind of the walls will always stay the same, and the void inside will grow or shrink. So we'll go to create, or I'm sorry, go to annotate, and we're going to make some more align dimensions between these here. So we'll go there, lock that, we'll do it right there, we'll lock that. We'll go from the edge of the wall to here, get that 3 inches and lock that, and we'll go from this reference plane to this reference plane, 4 inches, and lock that. Okay, so it might seem that your dimensions are getting really ugly now, but that doesn't matter because when we load this into a project, none of these dimensions come with it. These dimensions are just used to help you mess with this family and make sure it all works. If you actually want to go ahead and annotate it in the project, you'll have to re-annotate everything. So yeah, these annotations, they look really ugly, but they won't come through and they don't matter. All they are is to help you create the drawing and to add parameters where you need them. Okay, so now that all of those dimensions are locked, let's go ahead and make this this void. And so we're going to make a void, so it's going to be under void forms, and we're going to make a blend between voids. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a void that's just kind of a rectangle up on top that'll like kind of symbolize the top of the tray, and then we're going to blend that into a small circle that's going to kind of represent where all this water is going to flow into, kind of the waste pipe. So we'll do void blend. So you'll see now we can toggle between editing the top. Quit sketching. You have to draw something before it allows you to move over. So I'll go back to void blend. We'll draw something first, and then we'll toggle to go to the other side. So currently what we're drawing is just one of the sides of the blend, then we'll create the other side of the blend. So since this is like technically what we're working on the bottom right now, that'll be considered the first end in our Z direction. Okay, so we said we wanted to create a rectangle. So we'll create a rectangle between those reference planes that we drew, and it's just a rectangle from that corner to this corner here. And again, we want to lock all of these object lines, these edges of our void, to these reference planes. So we locked them to those reference planes, and it looks like we're all good. So we'll hit edit top now. We'll go to the other side. So we're choosing to edit the top. It's not the best word for it, top, because it's technically below, but it's just the other side of our blend. So we want it to come right through the middle here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go over to the Create tab, and I'm going to make a new reference plane that goes from here to here, and it's just going to be temporary to be able to give us that center point that we want. Oops, sorry, I don't want it from there to there. I actually want to make it the centers of there. So I'm going to go back to Create, Reference Plane, and I'll snap it to the center of this. So snap it to there, snap it to there. Okay, again, and that was just temporary to get the placement we need to put our circle. So now we can come back over to our Create Void Blend, the top boundary here, and we can go and we can create a circle. And I believe the trap diameter is 2 1/4, so that means the radius is going to be 1 1/8. So we'll hit the intersection for our center, and we'll say our radius is 1.125 inches. Hit enter there, and we have the location of our circle. So one thing that we have to do before we finish is we have to make sure that this the location of this circle changes with the square, and it's a little tough to do. But if we click this circle here, you can see that you have the option to make the center mark visible. So we're going to check that to make it so we have our center mark visible. And making our center mark visible allows us to annotate to this circle. And so what that'll allow us to do is it'll allow us to lock the dimension from this plane to this the center, and then from the center to this plane as equal, so that anytime this dimension changes outward like this, those dimensions will stay equal, and this drain will stay right in the center. So again, we're going to do that really quick. We'll go to Annotate, Aligned. We're going to go from this reference plane to the center, and then to this reference plane here. Again, when we're making an equal dimension, we have to make sure that we go all the way through. So we'll click there, click the center, click the bottom, we'll click over here, we'll force it to be equal, we'll click our equal toggle, and then you can just hit escape to be done with that, and escape one more time. So again, we made all of these changes inside of our void editor. And so once we go through and we finish this, if we hit that check mark, these dimensions, I believe, will go away. But don't worry, those parameters are still in there. Those are forced to still be equal. It's just that these equal dimensions are inside of this edit. It's kind of weird, but that's just kind of how it works. Okay, so the only thing we have left is to worry about the Z direction here. And I'm not going to worry about it too much just because I want to go into a different view and drag it to exactly where it needs to go so I can lock it. But it will be nice to be able to at least make it so that our square is on the top and our circle is on the bottom. So we just kind of maybe want to flip these around. I'm going to make it so that this one's 1 foot, and that's just going to make it so the square is 1 foot up, and the second end I'm going to make it 0 feet, and that's just going to make it so that the circle is on the bottom. Again, because we drew our square first, then our circle, so that's just kind of how it goes. We could have drawn it the other way around, and then we would have just had to have been less cautious with these, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so now that we've done that, we've gotten this set to force to equal, we've locked the square to these reference planes here, we can go ahead and we can finish our void. We'll hit the check mark, and it comes through as orange, so that's kind of what an extrusion looks like. Let's go to our 3D view to see what's happening here. Okay, so in our 3D view, we have our water fountain, we have the little button that goes along with it, and now we have this void down here. And the issue right now is we didn't put the correct Z dimensions in, so this void is just kind of going into nothing. Since that's the case, so we can click it, we can easily choose to drag this up to the top there, and then drag that up to the center line as well. We don't want to do it in our 3D view though. I just wanted to go to the 3D to help us see what happened. But it will actually be easier to work on this from either the left or the right. So I'm going to go to the left view. And in the left view here we can now see that we have our void occurring down here, and we have our water fountain shape up here. So again, what we want to do is we want to make it so this blend comes up and snaps to these. So once I drag this up and drag it to the top of this shape, I can say that I always want the top of the void to be locked to the top of that shape. Then we can also drag this up to that center line there, and then I can also say here to lock that. So we make it so that the bottom circle locks to the center reference plane. Okay, so one quirk of Revit is that if you draw a void and it doesn't automatically intersect something when it's first created, if you drag it to a different location to make the void, it's not going to automatically void it out. You have to use this cut command. So we'll click our void, and we'll click the cut command right here. It'll cut geometry. So we'll say we want to cut, and then how this command works is you choose the void first, and then you choose your shape that you want to cut from. So we chose our void, then we chose our shape to cut from, and that made it so we cut the tray out of our water fountain there. So hit escape a couple times just to finish that command up. Okay, so what we have right now is a pretty rough kind of rendering of what a water fountain might look like. Again, a lot of times when we're making families for Revit, we just want to make something that is pretty obvious of what it is without having to put too much time in it. Obviously, we didn't go in and we didn't put a fountain head in, and we didn't make some other features that might go along with it, but we really didn't need to. I think what we've done here symbolizes a water fountain well enough. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you guys then really quickly is how to make connections. And connections are really important in Revit, especially when you're doing MEP work, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to really easily draw piping or duct work or like electrical cords or things like that by connecting them up to certain appliances or fixtures or different things like that. So to create connections, you have to have a shape to put them on. So I'm going to go ahead and draw two quick extrusions off the back. So I'm going to go to the back side here. Or actually, first, let's go to the floor plan reference level, and let's set our current work plane to this right here. We're going to make it so we're right on the edge of the wall. So I'm going to go to Create, and I'm going to go to set our work plane. Again, we can just go and we can pick a plane. We'll hit OK, and we'll set our work plane to this front face of the wall here. So we'll click there. Again, Revit's going to tell us that you're not going to be able to work in that view or on that plane in this current view. You're going to have to switch your view. So we're going to go and we're going to switch to the backside view. We'll hit open that view. Okay, so we're behind the water fountain right now. We're on the opposite side of the wall. And currently our view style is hidden line, so we're not going to be able to see anything since the wall is hiding our water fountain. So instead we'll come over to this, we'll click this, and we'll say we want to go to wireframe. That'll allow us to see through the wall and see our water fountain here. Okay, so the two connections that we want to add are a cold water connection and a sanitary connection. A sanitary connection is just nice words for a waste pipe. So let's go ahead and let's create a new extrusion here. We'll click extrusion here, and we're gonna start by making a circle. So we'll just make a circle, and we're gonna make it right at the center line here. We're just gonna assume that the waste water comes out right at the center. It might not, but again, this doesn't have to be perfect. So we'll make it right there. Again, we said that our waste pipe was 2 1/4 inches in diameter, so our radius is 1.125 inches. We'll hit enter there. And I don't want to parameterize this. I'm just going to make it so that that radius is 2 1/4, and then we'll actually give a parameter to the connection itself. That'll allow the connection size to change without our little representative cylinder coming off changing, but that's not that big a deal. We just need a shape to connect it to in the first place, and then we can allow that connection to change. Okay, so we want to start at 0 feet. We're just going to say that we want this to start right where we made our work plane, which was the edge of the wall, and then we want our extrusion to end, and we just want it to come off, I don't know, let's just say like an inch. Let's just make it come off the wall very slightly. So we want to come backwards. We're going towards the back end, so we'll say -1 inch. Okay, so now that we've done that, we'll just hit our check mark. And let's just go to a 3D view really quickly to make sure that we drew it in the correct way. Again, hidden line style's on, so we're not going to be able to see inside the wall. So I'm going to click this to say we want to go to a wireframe. Yeah, I did it again. I just made it so our extrusion went the wrong way. Instead of -1, I should have sent it to +1 inch. Okay, there we go. Now it made it so that that cylinder is coming out the back. It wasn't going into the water fountain. Okay, so we have that cylinder there. That gives us this surface to put the connection on. We're going to make one more cylinder for the cold water, so bear with me just for a second, and then we can put these connections on. So we'll go back over to our backside. Our work plane is still the face of the wall. So let's just go to create, and we will create a new extrusion here, and our cold water supply. Let's just make it 1/2 inch pipe. So I'm going to go to circle here, and I'm going to get, I don't know, actually let's go ahead and let's make a reference plane for this so we lock it to a good spot here. So I'm going to go back over to floor plans, and I'm going to make a reference plane that comes over 3 inches here. So I'll go to create, reference plane, and it's not going to give it to me from there, it's not going to give it to me from there either. So instead of that, I'll go to create, reference line, and we'll make a reference line that comes in from here. How about, yeah, let's do 2 inches. So it comes in from that wall at 2 inches. Now I'll create a reference plane. It comes up this way. Perfect. Okay, so we have this reference plane that's going to symbolize where our cold water is going to go. And I'm going to create an annotation here and lock it just to make sure that that stays put. Okay, cool. Now we can go back to our backside elevation here. Okay, so I'm going to go create, and now we can create our extrusion. We'll create this circle, and I'm going to create it as a 0.25 inch radius. Hit OK. Again, what I want to do is I want to click this, and I want to make sure that the center mark is visible. And then what we can do is you can create an annotation from there to there and lock that dimension. So we'll go create, annotate, aligned. We'll go from this to the center line there. Again, it's showing us that it's 2 inches, and we want to lock that. Cool. So that's just going to force this circle to be 2 inches inward from the wall there. Okay, so now that that's done, we'll hit that check mark. Oh, let's first change this to 1 inch because we learned that -1 inch was the wrong direction. Okay, so we go from 0 to 1 inch. We'll hit check. Cool. We have that cylinder there now. So let's go to our 3D view and check it out. Now we can see we have 2 cylinders coming out the back. we want to add connections to them now. So the best place to add connections, I feel, is in the 3D view because it really allows you to see exactly what face you're putting your connection on. So once you're in the 3D view, make sure that you get a good view where you can see the edges of these circles here. We'll go to Create, and we're going to make a pipe connector. So that's right here, pipe connector. We'll click it, and we're going to click the back face of this pipe here. So we'll click that face, and you'll see it gives us this connection here. We can worry about changing the diameter and the classification of it in a second, but let's just go ahead and give this one a connection as well. So again, all you got to do to make these connections is just click right on those faces, and it'll put the connection on there. Okay, so once you've given them those two connections, you can just hit escape. And so now let's work with a sanitary connection first. So let's click this connection over here. So once we've clicked it, we can go through now and we can call this system classification sanitary. So again, that's the purpose of this connection, is to be a wastewater pipe. So we'll call it a sanitary connection. And for some reason, the Revit default is a 2-foot diameter pipe, which is obviously massive. So we're going to shrink that down quite a bit. So instead of just making it a hard value that the user from the project has to accept, let's give it a parameter and let them choose what pipe size they want to use. So to do that, we'll click that little rectangle right next to it, which allows us to associate a parameter. You'll see our current parameters we have in there, so let's add a new one. And we're going to call this sanitary diameter. Again, we're going to make it a family parameter so it can change from family to family, and we're going to make it an instance parameter. Again, the instance makes it so it changes from family to family. Family parameter just makes it so that you can't see it in the schedule. Okay, so we'll hit OK here. Alright, so it's a sanitary diameter. We can hit OK. So now that there's a parameter to it, we can come over to family types here. I'm not going to save it just now. And we can see now that sanitary diameter has a value to it associated with it, and we can change this to 2.25 inches, which is what our sanitary diameter is. Hit OK. And now we can see that that diameter shrunk down to the size it needed to be. Okay, so let's do the same for the water supply now. We'll click this. We want to hit the drop down under system classification and say this is domestic cold water. And then we want to give this one associated family parameter as well. So we'll click this little rectangle box next to diameter. We'll say that we want to add a parameter, and we're going to call this CWS, which is cold water supply diameter. Again, we want to make it a family and an instance, because that's all we're dealing with in this class. We'll hit OK. We'll hit OK. Come back up to our family types under properties here, and we can change the cold water supply diameter to 0.5 inches. And hit OK. And now you can see that connection size is good as well. So I'm going to go ahead and save this family. Now that we're done here. So I'll hit the drop down and I'll just say save or save as. You can just choose a place to save it. I'm just going to put it here for now. I'm going to call this water fountain. Actually, I'm just going to put it on my desktop. Okay, so we'll say water fountain. I'm going to save it to my desktop. We'll hit save. And let's go through now how we put it into a project. So I'm going to open up a project here, and let me see if I have one. I might not. Shoot, yeah, I haven't put my my Revit projects back on this computer yet, so don't worry about that. But anyway, we'll load this into our project just like we do any other family. So if you remember how to load a family into a project, it's always under that Insert tab, and you can go to Load Family right there. And that's if you are in your project. So currently we're in the family editor instead of the project editor. But if you're in your project, you can go to Load Family, you can find where you saved this, and then you can put it into the project. Okay, so that was a really quick intro on dealing with families, and hopefully it'll help you out with doing your homework and making your water fountain if you didn't quite finish it in class.